Thank you very much, Ralph, for taking your time out and talking to us today. I know it's very early in morning and you are joining us from New Brunswick. So first of all, Merry Christmas and very happy holidays to you and your family. And we thank you for taking time out for us. Okay, I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit about what do you do as a futurist and how do you contribute as a futurist?
Um, I suppose I should just back up a little bit to give you a little bit more context. I spent 36 years in the Canadian military, and in the latter part of my career was to go into what we called innovation and go into a section and do innovation. And what I found was the ideas were good, but we had trouble making them stick and really having a long-term vision for them and everything else. So post-retirement in 2014, I decided that it might be fun to get an education. So I started the master's, and that led to another one, and that led to a PhD opportunity in the UK in Open University. And in there, in the summer of 2018, I attended a master class by Sohail Inatullah in Hamburg. And that sort of, I discovered futurism there, I guess, about that time. And it became the methodology that sort of drove my thesis, looking at how technology and people's relationship with it drove how they saw the future. And that has just carried on since then. I finished my PhD. I've worked with publishing a book for Sohail as one of his editors, his latest book, CLA 3.0, and a few other articles with the Human Futures magazine and the World Future Studies Federation. Presently, I am putting together a series of essays that will actually become a book, and that will be my futurist contribution, I guess, in the thing. Rather than going the route of publishing individual articles, I've decided to head down the path and go down the path of the book, and then we'll touch on everything from how technology guides our future, how decentered future is post-humanism, and how causal layered analysis and other methodologies impact that. So that's sort of where I am. So I'm a very new futurist with a gray beard.
And you have worked on CLA. Tell us a little bit about that, and why do you think it is a good technique to use in future studies?
One of the things that attracted me to CLA is it helps me, my interest level, I think my tagline says technology culturalist. I'm very interested in how our relationship with our technology and how that sort of steers our thinking about where we see the future going. And it was very difficult to be able to break that out of when you interview people. Well, how do you break down their understanding, their beliefs, and how do you see through their eyes what they see about their life and technology and the opportunities and alternate futures. And like I said, I stumbled upon CLA in 2018 in Hamburg, and I realized that it gave me the opportunity to go a little bit deeper than surveys and the specific data, quantitative and approaches, because you can look at it both from what they say about themselves, the structures that they work in and live in, and how that contributes to the way they see the world, their worldviews and their mythology and metaphors and sort of things. So it gave you a really rich and deep picture of the environment and their relationship with the world around them and technology, to be able to sort of have a good idea of what they saw, and to be able to tweak it or offer them opportunities to tweak it. The other thing I really found strong about CLA is not just as a group activity, but the CLA of the self. To actually interrogate your own belief systems and your own biases and dependencies and those sort of things through CLA. And I think that gave me personally the ability to step beyond where I'd actually been with technology before and with the future. And, I always thought the future was pretty much, well, just decide what it is and we'll build it. And now I have a much more nuanced view of how we actually arrive at that fictitious place called the future.
So when you are doing causal layered analysis, which step seems more difficult, if there is any step in causal layered analysis that you find more challenging as compared to the others, like worldview maybe, or creating I mean, understanding your own worldview or the worldview of the others, and finally turning that into a metaphor.
Well, I mean, you just you hit it bang on. I mean, first, the hard part is stepping away from your biases and worldviews and metaphors. I mean, you have to really have a pretty good handle on how you're thinking about the problem, because if not, you'll just overlay your own belief systems. And the second one is obviously not obviously, but I think the myth metaphor one is very difficult, because every profession in a way has a different one. Every culture has a different one. Every area, the Western, Eastern, Southern, whatever you want to think. But very much they're driven by unique ones so to track them down and be honest about what uh, um, you're finding and not overlaying your own belief systems on them, that makes it very difficult. The first two layers, litany and in the systemic layers, they're fairly straightforward. We as researchers investigate those layers fairly regularly, but to step up those next two layers of deeper layers is sort of uncharted territory in a lot of ways, and more subjective, so a lot of people stay away from them.
So, like, I mean, if you are working with a group of people trying to figure out the future of their organization, maybe, and you have to take them to their worldviews, what kind of questions that helps you elicit their worldviews?
I guess in the beginning there, I was saying that I'm working on a series of essays. So right now I'm using CLA as a way of interrogating textual theories and documents and everything from Martin Heidegger all the way up to about to Jim Dantor work, and breaking it down that way. So the CLA now, in my perspective, in the last year and probably for the next year to go, will be used as a tool that I use to deconstruct, to interrogate the written text and theories, that sort of thing, and as a foundation for a thinking tool to be able to put it all back together in a coherent, hopefully coherent book. So that's where I'm focused on right now. I'm not employing it at a institutional level yet. When I was in the military before, we did a lot of workshops, and then brought them along their thinking process and opened up new ways of doing that sort of thing, and challenged what the mythology level, I guess, in the military context is very much our culture, our regimental histories, and all those sort of things. And the aurora we build around some of the senior soldiers and stuff like that. So it's breaking them loose of that. But in the context I'm using it right now, it is very much a interrogation tool and a deconstruction tool.
Okay, and when you were working with the military, and you had young people to work with, and when you were working with them, like, how does their culture defines their worldview? Like, I mean, what kind of relationships you saw between their cultural activities as part of the military and their worldview?
Yeah. As we take in, because we take in Canada a broad cross section of, we're very reasonably representative, I guess, of the people in Canada, and they come in with, from the west, the east of Canada, different nationalities, all those sort of things come into a melting pot. The military doesn't really try to worry too much about their culture, because we try to replace it. As we drive them through their boot camp and on all those type of things, we are now instilling them, inculcating them into thinking like us, the Borg, if you wish, but it's to be sensitive to that area, because as you try to build that group culture, you can do a lot of damage to their confidence levels now if you don't have a handle on what they believe in the beginning. So it's a little bit of steps. We pay attention to where they came from, their demographics, their income levels and stuff along those lines. And it's important that we do understand that as a leader when you're going past that process.
So, and when you are, using any of the futuristic techniques or any of their tools, how much, what is the role of imagination that you see playing in creating their worldviews and finally turning that into a metaphor? What is the role of imagination in that?
I'm a firm believer, I guess, much to the horror of a lot of my supervisors when I was doing my PhD, that I believe the researchers inside of the research. I mean, we're not a clinical person that stands in the back and watches it go by. So our role is supposed to be in there and a participant. And my belief, a lot of what defines my theory and how I think is philosophical posthumanism from Francesca Fernando. And in there, and Karen Barad, who wrote Meeting the Universe Halfway or something along those lines, they believe that most of the stuff that happens in research is a interaction between the researcher and the researchee, or the topic that you're doing. It only exists for that moment that we bump into it and we start reacting with it. Our conversation now is very much that way. My answer drives your next question. Your next question drives my answer. So it can't be replicated, again, an hour from now, because we'll have a different way of answering it and we'll have a different thing. So I really see the researcher being inside of that. So that's where it's very interesting to keep as much as you can your biases separately, to try and understand, let them have their voice, but at the same time interact with them and push them to new ideas and open up ways of thinking for them. So it's a very much a nuanced dance, and it happens immediately. And the other part is, I think we need to understand, is the person that has the power in that type of situation is the person we're researching, because they can choose to tell you the truth or not. They can choose to answer your questions or not. And they can even choose not to participate. So they have the lead power, and we're there because at their graciousness. So we need to treat them not as objects and data and units of measurement, but as people with ideas and beliefs and cultures that we need to understand, and then help offer ways of seeing the world a different way.
When you are talking to people about futures studies, what I found in my experience is that people tend to have this belief that future is predetermined most of the time. They can predict it. Scientists can predict the future quite certainly, and whereas the assumptions of futurists is a little different. They say that it is not predetermined at all. It is an open space. So, do you find these kind of challenges when you are interacting with other people regarding future?
Yeah, and actually, that is sort of what drove me in my research, my PhD. But I had, my title was A Habitus of Technology, and how does that affect our future thinking? Very much when you talk to people about the future, it's predetermined, but that also links very closely to their understanding of technology, that it's moving at a faster pace and we can't keep up with it, and it's just going to keep rolling. So they believe it's determined that we don't have complete control over what's happening in our future lives, and that just drives them the beliefs of their futures. They also believe that technology is a tool. They have control of it. So it's not really that deterministic instrumental beliefs that drive a lot of thinking of our technology, also sort of starts narrowing our vision of the future. And it really makes it easy for futures to be manipulated by larger groups of organizations and funding and those sort of things. Whereas the futurist hopes to open their eyes to new ways of looking at it, but without understanding how the thinking originally got to that place, the beliefs in technology, their beliefs in the future, you can't get them to see that. They may go, yeah, that's cool, but they'll never build that way because they won't have connection with it. And they won't have given themselves permission, if you wish, to pursue that future.
In Canada, how many universities, you have been around for some time and you have worked with the military. So, I mean, are there any prospects of futurists? Are there any occupations now for futurists in Canadian government, in businesses? Do they have any such titles as a futurist? Um, any job possibility? Because when we have started this institute, one question that students ask us, what is the prospect for me? If I take up future studies, do my major in it, where do I end up? Do I have any job? Is there any job market for futurists? So what is the scene like in Canada?
Well, I guess I'll answer that in two ways. One, in 2014, I left Canada to live in Europe for a while. And we just got back in 2019. About the time I discovered, being a futurist. But I would say, like, we'll use the military as a context. And futurist, if you said you were a futurist at a board meeting in the military when I was in it, everybody would sort of stop and just ignore you for the rest of the day. I mean, because you aren't that, truth to power, the data points and get it done and that type of attitude. But my sense is reading the news and watching the posts online and the documents starting to come through. A number of universities are starting to use it in design processes and international relations and those type of areas. And I think the government is starting to look at how they sort of bring that sort of thinking into their fold. They're probably worried about how they frame the job description more than anything else, because they would like the talent of a futurist, but I'm not sure they'll ever call it a futurist. And that's just my observational type post. I haven't looked for a job yet in Canada. I'm pretty much out of what I'm doing, but I think it's starting to come into focus. But unfortunately, most of what we believe in futures are, like you said earlier, that we can take a whole bunch of data from the past and connect the dots, and that will point us to a future. Well, it will point us to a future, but it'll be along a trend line that pretty much makes it the same as it was before, only newer and shinier, faster, and whatever. And it's connected to our thinking about the technology as a solution. Somewhere along the line, if we're making enough damage to the planet, we'll invent a piece of technology that'll go behind us and clean up. So, I mean, those two sort of solutionism sort of drives our thinking very much.
So when we are talking about future studies and how important is the values or the ethical consideration when you are learning to become a futurist? Why and how important is ethical considerations?
My personal belief is it's everything. If you're going to sit with somebody or a group or even yourself and plot a future forward, the impact on it very much aligns with what I think is geoethics. I mean, our movements in the world as we plan our futures, how does it affect the planet? How does it affect the people around us? I mean, who do we envision in our future? I mean, is it just people that look like us and work like us and have the same amount of money as us? And they're in our frame when we take that frame and move it to the future. But what about all the other people that are around us and less fortunate or more fortunate? The elderly, the really young. I mean, so I think ethics and morals, it has to be at the forefront of the future process. If we're just designing a future that makes the company you're working with more resilient as they move forward in time, but they still can leave the trail of damage that they're doing now, then at what point do you have to question whether that's what you should be doing as a futurist? So for me, it's at the heart of what futurism is having that belief system about what you can accomplish and what you can't accomplish, and having a sympathetic belief in your impact on the planet and external to the planet too, as we continue to explore space and the moon and those sort of things.
So when we say that in future studies, one of the assumption is that humans have agency, they have a will to choose how to shape their future. And then we find people who are pretty pessimistic, and they don't accept this view. How do you deal with that?
I mean, agency, a person's room to maneuver, if you wish, their agency very, very, very much defines how they can, even if they have gone through the process of future studies and they can envision the perfect future for them, if they don't have um, the economic means, the time, the situation, the health or activities, their box that they can maneuver in is very small, and that is a very sociological problem. I mean, very much we have to look at that from society. I mean, we talk about one of the things I look at is like the one laptop for kids, or providing people with technology to help them, or education that are underprivileged or have less of a opportunity than average people. But unless we make time for them, because their time is chopped up to survive, we will never give them an opportunity. The same applies at many levels of the let's say the Canadian public. Their future is pessimistic because they don't have the time or the agency or the money or the freedom or the understanding that they can make changes in their lives. One person, what difference is that going to make? That type of belief, or doesn't make a difference what I do. The government's going to do whatever it wants. We have built that fatalistic, that deterministic thinking into people, and the conformity. And futurism is a very much a process of nudging people out of that thought process and giving them small boxes to look through to think about other ways of approaching their problem. Answers your question or not?
It is a difficult question always,
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other part is scanning for emerging issues, emerging trends, mega trends. What is your process like when you are scanning trends?
Again, from the technology culturalist point of view, and I sort of, jokingly call myself a decentered futurist. When we build up those scanning and we, the funnel of probability, least probable, more probable, I very much like those. Because I like looking outside of them.
I see.
I probably more theoretical, conceptual than practical in how I approach the future. Everything inside that funnel is probably doable, and I almost believe that if the future makes sense, we're probably doing something wrong about envisioning the future. I mean, the future, really what we need, the future is going to be messy. It's going to be uncomfortable. We're going to have to make sacrifices and differences to make it a better future. If we're really happy with the future, as I sit right now in this chair and I go, oh, that's cool, I want to do that, then we're probably not making much of a difference. So I like staying outside of that, wondering about what happens. How do you make that curve go like this rather than that nice straight line? How do we get off the dots that we're plotting? So that's really how I do trend analysis, or sort of, I look at trends and then I wonder what if, I guess, is the answer. And that's very much what I'm building into these essays that I'm writing now.
When you have worked with technology and you have worked on transhumanism as well, so when we talk about this relationship, which is a very important relationship in our life now, most of us cannot live with without a mobile phone, without our computers and all that. So we have a close relationship, and it seems to be getting even more closer, and maybe it is going to be enhanced more. We have artificial intelligence which can do a lot of things for us which we are ourselves not very much able to do. For instance, maybe they are better in following the algorithm, we are not that good. Maybe they are better in rationalization because they are totally going to follow the algorithm whatever it says, and we cannot do that. So what is the possibility of a work possibility for humans? Like, what are we going to do now with all these tools available if our reasoning is going to be done outsourced to the machines? What am I going to bring to the table when it comes to the workforce?
Um, okay, I guess let's go here. The common belief around technology is humans are technology. I mean, we're separated. The humanism in our belief system puts technology separate from the essence of being a human, and we guard that really, really closely. We don't allow, how long it took us to get calculators in the classroom, because, we would lose the essence of what it is to do math. And for a human to do math, we'd have to memorize all that stuff. We used to teach logarithmic tables, and you had to memorize them. And this technology creeps, but it's because we always try to keep them separate. When we see technology as an extension of ourselves, we offload our work to the laptop, to the AI, the brain power. It follows the algorithm more closely, and it really gives us a pure result based on the algorithm. Well, somebody wrote that algorithm. His biases or her biases are built into that algorithm, and they have a purpose to provide you with a certain type of result. So we're not really offloading, we're just absolving ourselves of responsibility.
I see.
I almost look at technology as a trait of the human. That, from the first time we started using technology millions of years ago, it helped us. We have co-evolved together. It was a catalyst that helped us evolve, and we evolved our technology all the way along. And it becomes a catalyst. Technology doesn't make social media bad. The person and the relationship the person's having with that technology at that point, it just amplifies the traits that are already existing in the human. So what you see out there is not Twitter saying something. It is the person at the keyboard having that relationship with empowerment from the technology. But very much that we are responsible, and the technology are co-responsible. We have an interaction, an entanglement, if you wish. When we start recognizing it that way, then we start thinking about the whole process differently. I mean, what's the new one there? Chat GPT. Everybody's the AI that'll write you an essay. Everybody's saying, "Oh my God, it's going to ruin schools." Well, so what if I collaborate with an AI to write something? Two things will probably happen. One, I'll learn something from the AI, bringing it forward, and I'll be forced to make it my own. And my God, the professor will probably have a much easier time reading it, and be able to say, the chat GPT can only give me stuff that exists already, because it goes into this massive database, pulls all the stuff up and writes something. But anything new in that document is me and the inspiration from the chat GPT. So I don't see that problem. But as long as we keep them apart and we go us or them, it's going to take our jobs and we'll be out of thing, or we're going to fight back and keep that it sets up the perfect tension, and it doesn't anymore. We need to start closing that gap.
How do we do that? Because considering the power dynamics, like these all the AI and the big data, all of them are. I mean, big data is collected by some big organizations. These artificial intelligence algorithms are written also by powerful people. They are the real power brokers. So, I mean, as an ordinary individual like me, I have to live with whatever they have created. So this kind of relationship that I have with technology is different from the relationship that a San Francisco young guy would have with technology, because he is one of them who is making it, whereas I am only the consumer of it. So how do we do that? How do we bridge this gap, considering the less privileged group, whether it is Canadians, whether it is Pakistanis, they don't seem to have any power, any control over technology. How is this how is this built?
And I think that is the collision we're about to have. As we look at how the planet is being chopped up and the impact on democracy, the impact on the internet being carved up into fiefdoms, and I think that's a collision we're about to have. You talk about the Pakistan and Canada. Where I live right now, I have electrical power coming to the house, but I don't have a phone, and there's no internet, and there's no cable. So everything I get is via another libertarian who lives in California. Elon Musk's satellite dish is sitting in my backyard. So I mean, but if I drive 3 kilometers down the road, I don't get a cell signal. But you'll see a sign on the side of the road that says, to find out road conditions, text 511. Well, there's no cell signal. I mean, those are the inequalities are the first part, I think, of bridging that or patching the gap that we have, because the people that are not inculcated into using technology the way it is now are the ones that don't have access to it yet. That when they start bringing that mass into the technology world and start saying, oh, that doesn't match me, that isn't me, that will add a lot of weight to how we start changing how we use technology and go that way. The second part is who vets right now when you get a piece of technology in your hand and it does stuff for you. How does that? I mean, there's nobody really in the system that vets the intentions, the biases that built that piece of technology, and those are legislation that we probably need to look at some way. So it's a balance between public awareness, mass of use of making it accessible to lots of people, and government legislation and control as in all things. It's a long haul, but it starts with us accepting the fact that we can actually control, because we control how we use a piece of technology. There's a lot of unintended consequences of using a piece of technology, but it's our unintended control. I use technology, my iPhone, much differently than everybody, the person next to me. The last thing I ever do is talk on my phone. I mean, it becomes a tool for a whole bunch of other things. And so I think not really an answer to your question, because I don't think we have an answer yet. But the 3 things we need to do is start looking at legislation, start getting the people that are not on technology, have access to that technology in place and starting to be able to use it. And in the middle group that have sort of absolved themselves of actually thinking about why Facebook gives them an ad, we need to start giving them a little nudge and saying, it's time for you to start thinking for yourself and paying attention to how you're interacting with that screen in front of you.
Even the access, as you said, it is challenging for a lot of a big population in Pakistan do not have internet connection. So I mean, we are using all the technologies that is available in Pakistan, but still there are people living in the same city, they don't have access to it. So the access is one issue, and the other challenge is that all the apps, no matter whether you use it or I use it, neither one of us has created that app. That app is created by a businessman, and they created it to make profit of it. So I mean, these are the challenges that I see. Now I would like to know about North and South collaboration. I mean, right now it is pretty popular to collaborate with the global North, for instance. I mean, this is what seems to be the agenda of most of the higher education institutions, to collaborate with other institutions. And there is another thing, which is sustainable development goals, which also comes into play, and that provides us a framework for ethical considerations. So do you think, I mean, this is a good enough ethical framework? SDGs, do they provide comprehensive framework for us to think about the future in ethical way? And what do you think? Like, I mean,
the collaboration with the global North, as you said, or the universities in the North who sort of have satellites all over the place. It's good probably as an incubator, but I mean, the whole process should be designed with a succession plan in place. That in X number of years, we've backed out. Particular university is backed out, and the university now is running on its own, representative of the people and places that it is located in. We tend to hang on, and it's I don't know if you would call it colonialism by extension, but it does have that trend that we bring what UK believes that their cultural education system is so much better than somebody else's, so they'll bring it in and they'll supplant it in. Well, that education system should be reflective of the culture that it is, and I think that's that matures, that needs to happen. So that sort of ties into the question about the ethics too. I mean, all those collaborations should have both a succession plan and an ethics, foundation built into them, that we think very clearly about what we're offering and how do you not just cloak it in the ethical concerns of the place you're going to, but you actually build it so it can be handed over or not handed over. I mean, you just should not be there forever. Unless it's an equal partnership. And I guess that's a sort of a vague answer, but yeah, I mean, ethics is at the heart of it. We need to make it so that what we're teaching in that area or what we're providing as an education is representative of what the people need in that area, because knowledge isn't power. I mean, it's an opportunity. Power comes with you being able to question the knowledge that you have and make critical decisions about it. And that's where the power comes in. And then we need to enable that, not somebody else's version of power.
I really appreciate the time that you gave us. Is there anything that you would like to add? Any other subject that you think that we should talk about?
No, I guess one of the things I never brought out is I believe, or what I'm researching right now is how tied the future is to our relationship with technology. And as I sort of hinted all the way along, when we picture the future, there's very few pictures of the future that technology hasn't somehow solved a problem for us. So we need to really understand what drives that solution. I mean, what thinks that's an acceptable solution. Like, a perfect example is carbon scrubbers. That scrub the carbon out of the air that we go along merrily making in our industrial society. Well, rather than, we believe somebody will build a solution to be able to carry on the way we are. We never ever question with our technology that, well, maybe we can use technology to stop making that carbon. That circular route is starting to poke its head up, but I think those are the type of things. And we're putting technology is sort of driving us forward on this self-driving car issue. Again, another fantastic piece of it. I drove in a Tesla a while back and it weaved in amongst traffic. It was great, but it would have been better if I didn't have to go at all. I mean, can't we build stuff, that the technology can also allow me not to go. I mean, much like here, we're chatting. You're supposedly as a 9.5 hours in front of me, but right now we're on the same time band. Yeah, I think those are the things that need to start being discussed. And they're dicey issues because government doesn't own them. Like you said, the very much, Apple, Meta, Musk, and a few others, they have it pretty much sewed up. And until we can sort of chip away at their controls or control how they get around the things, we're probably at their beck and call.
So it brings me to the last question, and it is pretty close to our heart in Pakistan, because we are going through a climate-driven change, which resulted in the heavy rains and floods that drowned 30% of Pakistan. So what are the trends that you're seeing in climate-driven change? And do you think it could probably bring the world together? Can it unite the world? Is that a possibility?
The answer is yes, it can. Do I think it will? It would be very difficult because the countries that control both the technology and the emitters have not yet accepted responsibility for their actions. And I think that is the issue. We have all the the climate change conferences. We gather everybody flies into these places, and they talk about it, and they make incremental changes and fight over the wording. But tomorrow, when they take off, the life of the person who's been flooded out in Pakistan is not going to change, and there isn't any vision for them to change. It is very much, well, I'll pay $3 bucks and I'll pay that much, but nothing concrete gets made out of that money. Like in Canada here, companies can buy offset carbon, so they can buy a chunk of land with trees on it, and that offsets some of the carbon. Well, it doesn't really, because the trees were already there doing their job, and now we've done, we made them doubly responsible. I mean, so I think the countries that we need to accept our responsibilities around the world, and it's in that's colliding with the populism, rise of populism in the world, and very much the intellectual society. It needs to happen, obviously, because Pakistan, the river's not frozen here in New Brunswick. I mean, it's a small issue, but normally it would be frozen. So those type of things are changing. Yeah. We need to put pressure on it, and I think that's the role of academics, futurists, and those sort of things, to step out from behind the paywalls and the conferences, and start making their voices heard, coherent voices in the language that people understand. And I'll leave that as my final thought.
Thank you so much, Ralph. I really appreciate you taking your time out and talking to us. We had a wonderful discussion. I would like to stay in touch with you. Maybe we can collaborate together a little bit.
Yeah, I would like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thanks. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for hunting me out. I was more surprised than you realize. I think that you found me and asked me. So very much, thanks very much, and you have a great week, and we'll talk later.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Take care.